Think about it. While in financial services or different verticals, data is what drives the business. Here in these critical infrastructure organizations, the production lines are driving the business. These OT, operational technology assets, are driving the business. The IoT assets, these physical assets, the controller in a manufacturing floor, production line, a PLC, or in a fusion pump in a hospital, these devices are really driving the business, serving our lives, right? If it's a water utility or electric utility or a hospital, the way we get these services is through these physical assets. So that's the hardcore of the businesses, and not protecting the hardcore of these businesses and just focusing on the data centers, servers, laptops, what have you, the managed devices. That obviously creates a bigger risk.
Yaniv Vardi, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. I'm so happy to have you with me. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
Phenomenal to have you here. Yaniv, today you're the CEO of, I think, one of the most interesting cyber companies probably in the world, Clarity, because you're dealing with cybersecurity in the contexts that are not trivial. They're both in terms of the complexity and how important they are, effectively in critical infrastructure. But also just the path of Clarity, I think, has been fascinating, and one that's very, very much in line with the startup nation and what we embody. A little bit before we get into your work today, tell me a little bit about yourself, the way you came into cybersecurity. How do you end up leading this company?
Yes, of course, sure. Before Clarity, I spent about 10 years in the US, in New York, graduated from industrial engineering there, and started my journey in one of the companies there, Sparta Systems, ending up leading the company, also here from Israel, for about 8 years, selling the company, and later on managing Panoramic Power, which was focusing on energy efficiency and operational efficiency, which I sold to Centrica, British Gas, and managing the international business for that company. I was approached by the board, and I thought very highly of the opportunity. One, because it's a great mission statement that we have, protecting cyber physical systems in critical infrastructure organizations. And two, I was very intrigued by the opportunity to really understand the challenges of protecting these industrial manufacturing and healthcare companies, and understand how to go about that. I think very highly of the opportunity because we protect people's lives, if you think about that. We're not protecting just data or personal information or critical information. We protect people's lives there day in and day out. If it's a hospital, if it's an industrial or manufacturing company, people's lives are at risk there. We're very much proud with the mission statement that we are pushing forward. And this is what was, for me, very, very attractive to take it, one, from a business perspective and build a business here that is a market leader, and two, with a mission statement that is truly critical and important in today's world.
I love it. So let's take a step back for a second. And cybersecurity comes in all shapes and sizes, and I think the majority of categories in the cybersecurity space are leaning much more towards the digitized space. We went from the networking firewalls in the 95 to the semantics and malware detection for operating systems, to cloud and identity and zero trust, and we see what's happening with AI today. Where does this physical security fit in here? And how place this for me in the cybersecurity context?
Sure. I'll take a step back, actually. Think about the world today. Digital transformation is really pushing industrial manufacturing, healthcare companies to connect all their physical assets to improve their business, to be more productive, to be more efficient, to be more competitive. So if you think about industrial companies, manufacturing companies, healthcare, the race to connectivity to get all these benefits is clear, but by far outpaces the ability to secure it. I compared that 2 years ago where the internet was coming up. The need for the internet and the value and benefits for the internet was great, but obviously at the beginning not secure. That's what we see today. Today there are more unmanaged, connected physical assets than number of people, and it's growing significantly. Think about it, Michael. We think that in the next few years we'll exceed 30 billion devices, physical assets that are connected for these companies to obviously be more productive, but not secured. And that creating a bigger risk, that expanding the attack surface, that's basically really putting these companies and people at risk where we are not secured mostly, and with these critical assets.
And what's at stake? So 30 billion. So the race to connectivity, yes. The upsides, of course. The what is at stake here if these devices this connectivity maintains unmanaged and unsecured? What could we be facing, or what have we experienced that could help us understand why this is a mission critical area?
Sure. So think about it. While in financial services or different verticals, data is what drives the business. Here, in these critical infrastructure organizations, the production lines are driving the business. These OT, operational technology assets, are driving the business. The IoT assets, these physical assets, the controller in a manufacturing floor, production line, a PLC, or an infusion pump in a hospital, these devices are really driving the business, serving our lives, right? If it's a water utility or electric utility or a hospital, the way we get these services is through these physical assets. So that's the hard core of the businesses, and not protecting the hard core of these businesses and just focusing on the data centers, servers, laptops, what have you, the managed devices. That obviously creates a bigger risk, and hence the unfortunately the number of attacks that we see today that is increasing, and the risk if an attacker is getting to an HMI and a PLC that is changing the chemical mix through a water pump or a controller, that can kill people. If an attacker is getting to a production line of a car manufacturer and now manage the robots there, that can create a huge risk. When you see Volt Typhoon, the Chinese government and the program that they deployed on critical infrastructure in the US, that's creating a risk to people's lives. When networks in hospitals are down because of a ransomware attack, and the hospital is not functioning anymore, and patients are moving from one hospital to another because of that, that's killing people. If a sensor in a hospital is not functioning anymore because of an attack, that can cause a risk to life. So we're talking about critical infrastructure organizations, that the hard core of these organizations are these physical assets that let them provide the services and push forward to basically have us benefit from these services so they can sustain our lives.
So it sounds like there's a huge fragmentation of systems that are vulnerable to these attacks, right? So, and I'm curious if you can help me understand the stack. So there's always, the I guess the electricity running, and then there's the operating system and networking. So maybe can you walk me through the stack for these physical devices and where Clarity fits in terms of its security alongside this tech stack?
Sure. So think about, the industrial manufacturing. There's a Purdue model with different layers. But the way to look at that, Michael, is first the need for visibility. And I'm using the Gartner customer journey to kind of describe to you where we sit in the stack, but also how the customer is looking at the journey. So first is visibility. We have the ability to really orchestrate the different ways of getting the data to map the entire network for our customers. If it's active or passive, configuration files, integrations, we collect the data, map the network for our customers, and be able to show the full visibility of all physical assets and all connected devices in the network. And then we start to provide exposure management to our customers, identifying the risk and vulnerabilities, but also helping these customers to prioritize the vulnerabilities on these critical assets, where the asset purpose is key to understand as part of the critical process that we are focusing on. So prioritizing the risk and the vulnerabilities, and then provide network protection to our customers through network policies, for example, taking actions as far as zones and segmentations, the ability to really reduce the risk with actions and not just showing the risk and the vulnerabilities for our customers.
Mm-hmm.
We provide threat detection, continuous threat detection, obviously connecting with the SOC and making sure that we are embedded within their ecosystem that they have, and making sure they have the data from us in real time, as well as securing the remote access into these assets as part of our platform. And I think today, as opposed to a few years ago, the value of having one comprehensive platform, the holistic approach, is critical because customers have enough solutions out there to integrate and service and all that. And so, like I said, securing the remote access into the network and not just identifying these assets, but securing the remote access into these assets in the network in a very secure way with PAM and ZTNA capabilities is critical, especially today with the third-party risk that everyone is talking about.
I'd love to double click with you on this context of risk assessment on the attack surface, because I think that's one of the things that I would imagine you mentioned that the values that it's providing here is the ability to look at the landscape and come to the security professionals and say, here is where we believe you may be vulnerable, and here is what could happen if we don't take action. And I think especially as you look at these different devices that are doing different actions, it's because of their fragmented nature and what they're aspiring to do, it's not as trivial as another database in the cloud, another laptop, another router or switch. What have you found successful in being able to articulate the risk assessments or the risk levels to security professionals that help them be most effective in communicating it so that they understand it and then take action?
Yeah, that's a good question, Michael. I think, first of all, it's fair to say that these guys look at the traditional ways of securing their networks and thinking it's just not effective anymore. So to that point, the ability to identify the risk and the vulnerabilities on specific assets is not enough, because you can have thousands of vulnerabilities on your assets. And in IoT, you can have hundreds of thousands of vulnerabilities, and 22% last year, for example, of this huge number were critical. So if you're a customer, if you're a CISO, and I'm telling you you have thousands of vulnerabilities, and by the way, it's all critical, what do you do with that? You cannot go and patch, especially not in production lines, manufacturing, or hospitals. You cannot just go and patch these thousands of assets with these critical vulnerabilities. But we are focusing on these critical processes. We understand the asset purpose, the actual asset purpose within these critical processes. We see what vulnerabilities were exploited. We are able to prioritize these vulnerabilities and the risk, and show you the risk hygiene and the factors that can actually help you to reduce the risk, and the actions with zones and segmentations, for example, that can help you to reduce the risk, the significant risk reduction with specific actions, and not just bombarding you with all the vulnerabilities and the risk and everything that everyone is doing, because it's just, like I said, not effective anymore. But being very focused on what actions needs to be done, what are the network policies that should be enforced, and how to do that. And I think that's very unique to Clarity, to leverage our domain expertise with the asset purpose, with the critical processes, with the critical and exploited vulnerabilities, and the network policies. Combine that with threat detection and remote access security. That these are the domain expertise that are bringing us to the table, and usually why customers are choosing Clarity over the others.
So, how important really is domain expertise in this context? You see a lot of cyber companies with great technologists. Many of them are generalists that are able to create good technology for detection or assessments or reporting, etc. It feels like Clarity is operating in a domain that does have, that you can leverage domain expertise. How really do you feel it is important here from your customers' perspectives that you're domain experts, and what is the domain expertise really on?
Sure. So the domain expertise are on the actual assets, their protocols, the communication, what a good communication looks like between these assets. What are these specific proprietary protocols that are Siemens or Schneider or Rockwell protocols that we need to actually identify to be able and identify the assets? I'll take a step back. Without these domain expertise, Michael, first, it's hard to identify these assets. And how can you manage or protect what you don't see? And so first is really identifying these assets, and you need this domain expertise to understand and have these proprietary protocols to understand these assets and the asset purpose and so on. Second, like I said, the traditional way of doing vulnerability management and risk management is just not valid anymore, especially with physical assets in these critical infrastructure organizations. And so if you don't have this domain expertise, you have hard time to prioritize these actions and these network policies for these customers. And you end up being a very generic solution that every cyber company can come, try to do everything to everyone. That's not working for these manufacturing folks or the industrial folks or hospitals in healthcare. They understand the need for domain expertise, and they will try to avoid these generic solutions out there.
What do you have most fun in your journey so far? What's been the most exhilarating part of running Clarity?
Wow, that's that's a good question. Look, I get my energy from meeting customers and partners. To be honest, I just came from I don't think I can share the name of the customer, but one of the biggest industrial company in the U.S. Just understand what's the value they get from Clarity and how they improve their business and operational efficiency, not just is cyber and the way we protect, but operational efficiency. I get my energy from these customer meetings, to be honest, customer and partners, and that's for me, that's great, that's fun. I also, to be honest, enjoy the team. We have a great team, and we like to work hard, play hard, and at the end of the day, I also enjoy the team. So time that we spend with the team. Just came back from New York. We spent a few days before the board meeting with the team together, kind of finalizing the plans for next year. We enjoyed that.
I love it. Yaniv, I really want to thank you for taking the time to join me here. This was such an awesome conversation. I learned a lot on a personal level, and thank you for all the amazing work you're doing. Obviously, it's not just about for you, not just about making money and building a successful company, but the impact that you're having, both on the impact specifically on the CISOs that are experiencing the product, but then even more broadly, I think that the first sentence you said in this episode is that you really feel like you're saving people's lives, which I think is it's obviously a great motivator. Yaniv, thank you so much, and best of luck.
Thank you so much, Michael. Take care.